The following story has been brought to you by StoriesToInspire.org.
In the 1950s, there was a case, there were many cases, but this particular case where a bacher, a yeshiva bacher, who didn't enlist for the Israeli draft, perhaps it was not malicious, perhaps he forgot, perhaps he didn't know, perhaps maybe he didn't want to, I don't know. It was a bacher, I don't know. He didn't enlist in the Israeli army. And those days, they took it very seriously. So on Erev Yom Kippur, the brisker Rav, Zechet Tzaddik V'Kadosh L'Bracha, puts out a call to Rav Tenenbaum. Rav Tenenbaum was the Yoshev Rosh of the Vadi Yeshivas. He represented all the yeshivas in Eretz Yisrael. He had tremendous contacts in and outside of government. And he calls him to his house in Geula, and he says, Tenenbaum, we have a problem on our hands. What is it? This bacha was arrested last night, and he's sitting in an Israeli jail with common criminals on Erev Yom Kippur. Got to get him out. Got to get him out, whatever it takes. He can't have Yeshua bacha sitting in jail. So he says, Kvei Rav, absolutely. I'll do everything I can. But you should just know, Erev Yom Kippur is a legal holiday in Eretz Yisrael. And nobody works. There's no one to talk to. I have no one to pick up the phone to. I have no one to call, no this and that. But you should know, don't think that I'm not machshir it. Matzi Yom Kippur, maybe even just after Havdalah, even before I even sit down to eat, I'm going to make a few phone calls. At that point, I'll be able to get through to people, and I'll get it done. Very good. So Brisker Tuesday says, Tenenbaum. See, some people nod their heads, they remember the story. He says, Tenenbaum, if there's something that you'd like to tell me, but you're afraid to tell me because you're afraid of my reaction, it's okay, you can tell me. He looks at Brisker and says, what? Let me say it again. Is there something that you'd like to tell me, but you're holding back because you're afraid to tell me, because you're afraid what I'm going to say? It's okay, tell me. He said, Adoni Rosh Yeshiva. What are you talking like? What do you mean? What do you mean? Don't tell me that you can't. Tell me you don't want to. I said, huh? He said, I understand. You work 365 days a year. Yeah. One day a year is the only day of the year that even the Satan doesn't work. That's why Satan is 364. Right? Well, and there's one day a year you sit with your family. You have to sit with the you with your family. There's one day a year nobody bothers you. So I understand it. So don't tell me that you can't. Tell me you don't want to. And I won't get upset. He hears that from the brisker Rav. There's no response to that. So he stands up, he bows his head, and he walks out, has no idea what he's going to do. So he's walking on Rechov Malchi Yisrael in Geula, after coming out of Brisker Rav's house. And he walks past some large green gates. Those of you who are of my age will remember very clearly. Maybe some of you who lived in Eretz Yisrael will also remember that there used to be a military camp right in the middle of Geula. It was called Machne Schnellels. Big iron green gates. It was still a British military camp in its day, and the Israelis took it over, and there's a camp. Okay, so today it's Schnellers is a very, very fancy real estate resort. You can't even look at an apartment there for less than $2 million. Don't even bother. Okay, so he knocks on the big gates in those days, the big gates, 1950 big gates. He knocks. He says, you know what? I'll make it a shtadlis. I'll do something. Knocks on the gates. Quiet. Knocks harder on the gates. So he says, Miza! Who's there? Oh, response. So he says, Tenenbaum, mi badi yeshivas, like, official, like that. So, okay, he hears the latch moves, and the creaking of the gate as the gate opens up, the squeaking of the gate, and there's actually a katzin standing on the other side, an officer. Why? It's Erev Yom Kippur, everybody went home. So who's staffing the place? A skeleton crew. It happens to be a katzin, but he's the shomer that day, sitting by the gate. He says, Ma tarotze, Kvod Rav. He saw what would you like? He says, Tishma, I have this problem. He's a yeshiva bacher. He didn't enlist for the army. They arrest him. He's sitting in a jail. We got to get him out. Whatever it takes, got to get him out. She says, Tishma, Adoni Harav. He says, it's a holiday today. There's mamash no better to call. If it was possible, you're a Rav, you look like a chashuv person, I would try to help you. But it's Erev Yom Kippur. One Jew should help another Jew. There's nobody to call. Nobody to call. So Tenenbaum looks at me and says, listen, if there's something that you want to tell me, but you're afraid to tell me because you're afraid of my tikuvah, my response to you, Basadi, you can tell me. He said, Ma? He said, I give you other part. Yeshcha mashu like it. You want to tell me something, but you're afraid of my tikuvah. You're belachas, Basadi, tagid li. He says, Ma ta medaber? Al tagid shata lo yachol, tagid shata lo rotzeh. Now, this officer did not have the fine midas of a Rav Tenenbaum. And he was so angry at him. Eze chutzpah. And he's so angry at him. He says, what are you talking about? How do you talk to me like that? I want to be nice to you, this and that, and this is how you respond to me? You're not. And he starts screaming at him, but the screaming at him was not enough to vent his anger. And he's still, so he's so apoplectic, he's purple in the face. There's this telephone sitting next to his desk. And Rav Tanamai was afraid he's going to call the guards and put him in jail. And he picks up the phone. And he starts screaming into the phone, not making any sense. He's panicking. He says, some rabbi came here, and he's screaming into the phone. He's screaming into the phone. Tanamai's watching all this. And then he goes quiet. And he hears from the other end of the phone, the guy said, Ma Rotze, what does he want? So he tells him, he says, there's some bacha, this and that, do you want to release him, that? And the guy says, done. And on that day, that officer, that katzin, got a bracha from the Brisker Rav. He took him afterwards to the Brisker Rav for being Meshachar this kid. And he got it done. Which Yid would not have given his whole fortune to get a bracha from the Brisker Rav at Erev Yom Kippur? Rabbi say, what's the point of the story? Avraham Avinu wants Archim. He wants it so bad that the pain of the bris milah is nothing compared to the pain of not having a Chesed. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu sees this. So what does HaKadosh Baruch Hu do? HaKadosh Baruch Hu hoitzicha min atika. He doesn't want to have Archim. So you have to make it ishtachas. What does Avram do? He goes to his trusty servant Eliezer. He says, Eliezer, bring me company, bring me guests. Go out to the shuk and bring me guests. He looked and there was nothing there. He comes back, says, boss, there's nothing there. There's nothing. And Emel at the back. She says, Eliezer, do you know why you didn't find? Because you didn't want to find. Avdi, not Eved. You're Avdi, you're my servant. It's in your interest to take care of me. HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself, Madach HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself, to try to protect. Of course you're going to try to protect me. So you went out hoping you wouldn't find. And you know what? Because you hoped you didn't find, you didn't find. I'm going to go out, and I'm going to go with my ratzon, with my tremendous tshuka for a mitzvah to be Mischabat HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I'm going to go out to be Machnos El HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Malachim will come, Nisim will happen, but Archim will come. That's us. We have so many things that we can't do. We all know we should daven better. We should be learning better. We should have better midas. We should control our anger. We all know we have what to work on. We have what to work on. So if you ask somebody, so why haven't you accomplished it yet? What do you say? Can't. Ein davar oimeh b'fnei haratzon.
Enjoyed this story? Come again. Bring a friend. StoriesToInspire.org